To Aru Majutsu no Index, Volume 1, Chapter 1, Part 3. Kamijo Toma stuffed his mouth full of the fried garbage and grinned. Grunted the girl, calling herself Index with a look of complaint on her face as she gnawed on a biscuit. The way she held the small biscuit in both hands made her seem a bit like a squirrel. Okay, you said you were being chased. Chased by whom? Having returned from his nirvana, Kamijo once again asked about the biggest issue in her story. He was not about to follow a girl he had just met less than 30 minutes ago down to the depths of hell. However, it was already likely too late for nothing at all to happen. So in the end, I have to go with the fox's words, thought Kamijo, using a personal term for the sake of feigned kindness. He knew it would likely resolve nothing, but he still desired to comfort himself by feeling that he did something. She said with a slightly dry throat.
Now, who was it? Maybe the Rosicrucians, or SM, also known as the Stella Matutina. I think it was a group like that, but I don't know their name yet. They aren't the type to find meaning in names.
They? Kamijo asked meekly. Apparently she was being chased by a group or organization.
Yes,
said Index surprisingly calmly.
a magic society.
Magic? What? That's crazy!
Was my Japanese weird there? I mean, magic. A magic cabal.
Hearing so in English improved nothing. What? What? Are you talking about some dangerous cult? Like a cult that says not believing in its leader will result in divine punishment and then proceed to give you LSD or brainwash you? That's bad in more ways than one.
Are you making fun of me?
Sorry, I just can't... I can't accept magic. I may know all sorts of Esper powers like pyrokinesis and clairvoyance, but I just can't accept magic.
Huh?
Index looked confused. She had likely expected a believer in only science to deny that any kind of strange thing could exist in the world. However, Kamijo's right hand held a supernatural power. It was called Imagine-Breaker, and could negate even the systems of gods seen in myths in a single stroke, so long as it was a supernatural power beyond the ordinary. Esper powers are pretty common here. Anyone's brain can be developed and have the pathways open up by having Esperin injected into their veins, electrodes attached to their neck, and certain rhythms played through headphones. It can all be explained scientifically, so it's only natural to accept, right?
I don't get it.
It's normal! It's completely normal! Utterly normal! It's 3 times enough!
Then what about magic? Magic is normal.
Index sulked like someone had insulted her pet cat. Well, take rock, paper, scissors, for example. Wait, is rock, paper, scissors known worldwide?
I think it's from Japanese culture, but I do know it.
Okay, if you played rock, paper, scissors 10 times in a row and lost each time, would there be a reason behind that? There wouldn't, right? Because it's human nature to think there is, said Kamijo with little interest. You'd think there'd be no way you could keep losing like that. You would start assuming there was some unseen rule, and once you start thinking like that, what happens when you start factoring in things like horoscopes?
You mean like you cancers are unlucky, so you shouldn't compete in any competitions?
Right, that's the occult's true identity. Luck is just our dreaming for the invisible rules. While reality is just pathetic coincidence, our hearts mistake it as some great inevitability. That's the occult. For a bit, Index frowned like a displeased cat, but then said,
So you didn't just deny it without giving any thought?
Right, and it's because I've given it such serious thought that I can see why those musty old stories are no good. I can't believe in some magician from a picture book. If we could raise the dead with the only cost being a bit of MP, no one would be developing these other powers. I simply can't believe in the supernatural that has no connection to real science. He felt that people only saw Esper powers as strange and mysterious because they were ignorant. The fact that those powers could be explained scientifically was common knowledge in that city.
But magic exists,
Index said as she pouted. Most likely magic was a pillar supporting her heart, similar to Kamijo's Imagine-Breaker. Well, whatever. So why were they chasing you?
Magic exists. Magic exists!
It seemed she obstinately wanted him to acquiesce. Then what is magic? Can you shoot fire from your hands without undergoing our psychic curriculum? If so, I'd like to see it. I might believe you then.
I have no magic power, so I can't do that.
Kamijo felt like he had just met an Esper failure that said they could not bend a spoon around a camera because it distracted them. All the while, a rather complex feeling filled his chest. He insisted that the occult did not exist and that magic was ridiculous, but he really knew nothing about the Imagine Breaker power that resided in his right hand. How did it work, and what was going on that he could not see? Academy City was at the peak of the world's powers development, but even its system scan failed to analyze his power. Consequently, he was labeled Level 0. Although that power had not appeared later due to a scientific timetable, it had resided in his right hand since birth. He insisted the occult did not exist, and yet he himself was a part of the supernatural that ignored the rules. Regardless, he refused to accept the ridiculous reasoning that magic could easily exist simply because there were strange things in the world. Magic exists, Kamijo sighed. Okay, for argument's sake, let's say that magic exists.
For argument's sake?
If it does, continued Kamijo, ignoring her. Why are they after you? Does it have something to do with how you're dressed? Kamijo was referring to the rather extravagant nun's habit that Index wore, made of pure white silk and golden thread embroideries. In other words, is this church-related?
It's because I am the Index.
Huh?
They're likely after the 103,000 grimoires that I have.
Once again, I don't understand at all.
Why do you seem to lose motivation every time I explain something? Are you the fickle type?
Let's go back over this. I'm not sure what these mentioned grimoires are, but I imagine it's a book, like a dictionary.
Yes, the Book of Abon, the Lemageton, Unus Preclicen Culten, Cultistus Gules, and the Book of the Dead are good examples. The Necronomicon is so famous there are all sorts of imitations and fakes, so it isn't very reliable.
No, I don't really care about the contents. He wanted to add that it was, because it's all a bunch of nonsense anyways, but he held his tongue. So instead he asked, so where are these 100,000 books? He refused to back down on that point. 100,000 books were enough to fill an entire library. Do you mean that you have a key to where they're stored?
No.
Index shook her head.
I have every single one of the 103,000 grimoires with me.
Huh? Kamijo frowned. You aren't going to say that these are books idiots can't see, are you?
You couldn't see them even if you weren't an idiot. There'd be no point if anyone could see them.
Index's words were so removed from reality that Kamijo felt like he was being mocked. He glanced around, but could not see a single musty old book that may have been a grimoire. All he saw scattered on the floor were game magazines, manga, and the summer homework that he tossed into a corner. Ugh. He had forced himself to listen up until then, but was at his limit. He began to wonder whether she had merely imagined being chased. If she had jumped from the 8th-story rooftop, slipped on her own, and gotten caught on his balcony all due to a delusion, she was not someone he wanted to involve himself with any longer.
Believing in Esper powers but not magic makes no sense,
Index said with a pout.
Are those Esper powers really all that great? It isn't right to make fun of people just because you have some kind of special power.
Well, yeah, Kamijo gave a small sigh. I agree. It's not right. It's wrong to think of yourself as above others just because you can pull off some little trick. Kamijo's gaze dropped to his right hand. No fire or lightning would come. It could not cause any beams of light or explosions, and no strange markings were going to appear on his wrist. However, his right hand could negate all kinds of supernatural powers, disregarding if the power were good or evil, or even the systems of God seen in myths. Well, for the people who live in the city, the power they have is like a part of their personality, so you should probably be a bit forgiving as far as that goes. In fact, I'm one of those Espers too.
Is that so, idiot? You can always just bend a spoon with your hand instead of messing around inside your head. What's so great about a guy who can cast aside his natural shade to color himself artificially?
You don't mind if I shut that mouth of yours along with that ridiculous pride, do you?
I won't give in to terrorism.
Said Index like a displeased cat.
Anyway, you say you're an Esper, but what can you do?
Well, if you put it that way... Kamijo was a bit unsure of what to say. It was not often that Kamijo explained his right hand to others. Also, since it only reacted to supernatural powers, it could not be explained without knowledge of the supernatural or Esper powers. You see, it's this right hand of mine. Oh, and in my case, it isn't doping. I've had it from birth.
I see.
If I touch it with my right hand, any kind of supernatural power will be negated. That goes for A-bomb level fireballs, tactical railguns, or even the systems of God.
Eh?
Why does your face look like you just saw a Good Luck Miracle Stone in some magazine?
But you don't even know the god's name. But yet you said you can negate his miracles?
In surprise, Index dug her pinky into her ear while giving a scornful laugh. This is really annoying. I kinda hate being made fun of by some kind of fake magical girl who claims magic exists but can't prove it. That muttering of Kamijo Otoma's soul seemed to upset Index.
I'm not a fake! Magic really exists!
Then show me something, Halloween girl. You aren't going to believe my Imagine Breaker until I destroy something with my right hand anyway. Come on, fantasy head.
Fine, I will!
Index threw both her hands above her head in annoyance.
Here, these clothes. They're the highest quality of defensive barrier called the Walking Church.
Index spread her arms to show off the teacup-like nun's habit. Walking Church? What? You're not making any sense. It's not very nice to keep using these incomprehensible technical terms like index and defensive barrier, you know? Explaining things means to tell them to someone who doesn't understand in a form simple enough to become understandable. Do you not get all that?
What? How dare you say that when you aren't even making attempts to understand?
Index swung her arms around in anger.
Fine, seeing is believing, right? Take a knife from the kitchen and stab me in the gut.
Stab you? Is this going to end up as a news story that says it all started with a pointless argument or something?
Ah, you don't believe me.
Index's shoulders rose and fell as she breathed heavily.
These have the bare minimum of components required to make up a church, so they're a church in the form of clothes. The way the cloth is woven, the way the threads are sewn, the way the embroidery is decorated, it's all calculated. A knife won't even put a scratch on it.
Yeah, right. What kind of idiot would just agree to stab you? He'd have to be an unprecedented kind of juvenile criminal.
Will you ever stop mocking me? This is an accurate copy of the Shroud of Turin, the cloth worn by the saint that was stabbed by the lance of Longinus. So its strength is Pope class. I guess you would say it's something like a nuclear shelter. It turns aside or absorbs any attack, be it physical or magical. I told you I got caught in the balcony after getting shot, right? Well, I would have a giant hole in me if it wasn't for the walking church. Do you understand now?
Shut up, idiot. Kamijo's appreciation gauge towards Index rapidly dropped, and he stared at her clothes with scorn. So if that really is a supernatural power, would it be torn to pieces if I touched it with my right hand?
Yes, but only if your power's real.
Perfect! Shouted Kamijo as he grabbed Index's shoulder. As if he had grabbed a cloud, it strangely felt like the impact was absorbed by a soft sponge. Wait, huh? Kamijo cooled his head and thought. What if everything Index was saying was true, as unlikely as it was, and this walking church really was sewn together with supernatural power? Would negating that supernatural power truly rip her clothes to pieces?
Huh?
Kamijo reflexively yelled out at the sudden premonition he had that he was about to suddenly go up a few steps on the stairway to adulthood. But...
Huh?
Nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. I have to breathe. Ah, jeez. Don't make me worry like that. Kamijo just couldn't stand it.
See? What was all this about your Imagine Breaker? Nothing happened at all.
Index put her hands on her hips and puffed her small chest in pride. But in the next instant, her clothes fell straight down like a gift's ribbon. The thread sewing her nun's habit together had cleanly come apart, turning it all into mere pieces of cloth. The hat-like one-piece hood must have been an isolated item, because it alone remained. Having only her head covered made it seem all the more painful. The girl froze, still with her hands on her hips, and her small chest puffed out in pride. To sum it up, she was completely nude. To read along with Aru Majutsu no Index, to read on your own time, or to read any other fine light novels, go to bakatsuki.org. BAKA-TSUKI.org. Also, if you would like a role in the audio light novel project, please go to the Help Wanted advertisement in the description. There is pay, although not that much. If you want to help in the monetary sense, feel free to use the PayPal donation link. All proceeds go to the voice actors I hire for the audio light novel. No, honestly, please. Someone please voice Index. I think I'm dying of the cancer my voice is giving me.